Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nick Bankhead and I'm an incoming dental student at the University of Utah School of Dentistry. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to get an A in organic chemistry. So if you're taking organic chemistry now or plan on taking it in the future, stick around and I'll show you how to get an A in OChem. So, like many of you, I did take organic chemistry. And before I even took it, I heard all the horror stories of how hard this class was and how many people failed it and how a nightmare it was with the professors and everything. And I was really intimidated going into it. And I wanted to make sure that when I took the class, I took it one time and I got through and got a really good grade. Now, my plan was working well until I took my very first test. Now, my very first test in OChem 1, I failed my test. I did terrible. I was unprepared. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to completely shift my study schedule and my study habits and how I was going to go about learning OChem to bounce back. Now, I'm proud to say that even with failing the first exam, I finished out with an A- in OChem 1 and improved upon that in OChem 2 and got an A in OChem 2. Now, I will give my best tips on how to get an A, and hopefully you can translate those into your own studying, and hopefully that will show in your grades. So the very first thing, and this is something that I'm just going to assume you're all doing, and that is going to class, actively listening while in class, and taking notes. This is like basic how to do well in school advice, or just going to school advice. So if you're not doing that already, start doing that. When I say taking notes, there are many different ways you can take notes. For me, I have an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, and I use Notability for my note taking, and I would annotate directly on the PowerPoint slides the teacher provided. I would download them off the Canvas app, import them into Notability, and then annotate directly on them. Now this worked very well for me as she would lecture on that specific slide. I would annotate directly on it. And when she would say, hint, hint, this might be on the test, I would put a big star on that slide. That way I would know what's important, what I need to focus on, what I don't need to focus on. The next piece of advice is identifying your studying strengths. Now, if you're in college, hopefully you have some habits or some strengths or knowing what study method works best for you. And so don't go and change up everything about what works best for you. Really lean into what your strengths are. So some of you might do well with flashcards. Some of you might do well with just reviewing the PowerPoints 100 times. Some of you might do well by recording the lectures and listening to the audio. Whatever works for you, really emphasize that. Now we're going to really get into the OChem specific things. Write out your reactions and mechanisms by hand multiple times. Now you're going to learn a lot of reactions and a lot of mechanisms in OChem, and a lot of those, depending on your teacher, you're going to have to know how to do those mechanisms by hand. If you do the mechanisms and reactions by hand, you'll get a very good feel and a very good understanding of how these things work, how the electrons move, how bonds break, how new bonds are formed. And that really is going to help you in understanding all of organic chemistry. The next thing is the ACS study guide and final. Now, in my school, we had to take the ACS final for organic chemistry, and that's like the National Standardized Final or something like that from the Chemistry Academy, something like that, or it's just like Chemistry Society. So there's a study guide for this. I would highly recommend basically memorizing that study guide before your final. Doing it multiple times. I had a few quite literal copycat questions as were in the study guide. There's also multiple study guides out there. There's even mock questions online you can find for free if you just go into Google and search for them. So I highly recommend utilizing the ACS study guide. If you don't have the ACS final and you have your teacher's written final, ask them for practice tests, ask them for study guides, for resources that will help guide you into getting a good score. Now, depending on your teacher, there may be a language barrier, there may be a learning impairment due to the class being online or in person. So there may be a disconnect there, and you may need outside resources to help you learn OChem, which is totally normal because not every teacher's teaching style is going to work for you. I would highly recommend Chad's Prep. You can type in like Chad's Prep, Chad's videos, or like Chad's organic chemistry course. it was $10 a month when I got it. It was absolutely worth it. There was detailed lectures on every subject, um, practice quizzes after those lectures, and then multiple, I think there was 3 full-length practice multiple choice tests at the very end. Now this was awesome because the subjects I didn't know as well, I could go back and rewatch the lecture, get a different professor explaining it to me, and even provide study guides that work really, really well for getting a good foundation in organic chemistry. If you're not a video person and you just want to read, find an organic chemistry textbook and read it. There's a few really good ones out there. Whatever required text your professor recommends, I would stick with that. But if there isn't a required OChem test or OChem text, you can go online and find a few of those for free. Also, utilizing YouTube, you may find other content creators making topic-specific videos. I would highly recommend checking those out if you need the extra help. And one of the last things is studying daily. With OChem, it's very easy to get behind. This class is kind of like learning a new language. However, if you're studying daily at the same place, same time every day, you're going to build really good habits early on, and you're going to really help yourself learn this difficult subject. Now, I personally thought anatomy at my school was harder than organic chemistry. Organic chemistry is really fun, honestly, once you get into it and you get into the lab and you're really playing with chemicals and like learning how to make different molecules. It can be really fascinating in different compounds. So try your best to be interested in this. Go in with an open mind. I know you've heard people say it is hard. You've heard me say it's hard, but I promise you, you can do this. You just got to dedicate yourself towards it. One of the things I also want to say is organic chemistry can be kind of broad, and your teacher can ask a lot of different types of questions on the tests. So be sure to ask your professor, is this going to be on the test or not? Ask a lot of questions. Ask clarifying questions. Ask whether it's going to be on the test or not questions. Ask very specific questions on how he or she wants. Even just like how to name compounds, whether that's a common name or IUPAC. It's all teacher dependent. So be sure to ask lots of questions, and that can help identify what you need to study. In a lot of college classes, you may have seen this before, but this piece of paper, I just drew this box, represents all of the material in the class. And this circle here in the middle represents testable material. I'm going to put TM, or what the teacher is going to test you on. Now, by asking a lot of questions, you're going to start learning within this circle, and then you might get a little bit outside the circle. That's how to get an A in OChem. I would highly not recommend starting and just like obsessing about the first 3 chapters and then burning out. I would start with what's testable, what your teacher is going to focus on, and then work your way up from there. That's going to help you identify what you're actually going to be quizzed on. So this is how I got an A in organic chemistry. I would say I studied for about an hour to an hour and a half every day. And then when testing was coming up, I would increase my study time. Another thing that I'll mention with writing out the reactions and mechanisms by hand, I really like Anki for some of my other classes like biology or memorization heavy classes. But for OChem, using physical flashcards and writing out the reactions and mechanisms on both sides with a physical flashcard and quizzing myself that way seemed to stick better in my brain. So maybe you can try that if you're having trouble. But if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments or search up other videos because there's other great resources out there. And other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you.